Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
So after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we broke a story about Jolene Hill. She was a middle school counselor here in Oregon at Pleasant Hill Middle School, and she said some egregious things about Charlie and about how he deserved it because he believed in the Second Amendment. Well, 3 boys took a stand at the school board meeting to speak out against Jolene Hill. Here's what they had to say. I'm so proud of these guys.
We're also proud members of our Turning Point USA chapter for high school students here at Coachella. Earlier this year, we had an opportunity to attend Turning Point USA Youth Summit, where we met Charlie Kirk and heard him speak in person. His words had powerful impact on us and helped us shape our perspective in young people who are engaged in the future of this country. That photo was shot and deeply saddened by the news of his assassination. Losing someone who inspired and empowered so many students like us is heartbreaking. What made it even harder was when there's an adult employed by this district who carries the position of authority over students who openly praised his death on social media. As students, it's difficult to feel safe and supported when we know there are educators who celebrate violence against someone whose beliefs align with ours. We are not asking everyone to agree with Charlie Kirk for 4 hours, but we are asking for basic human decency, professionalism, and accountability for building trust with guiding students. No one, student or adult, should celebrate political violence, and no student should fear bias or mistreatment because of their beliefs.
Well done, gentlemen. We need more young men like you to rise up in America. Keep being bold. Keep being courageous. I know Charlie is proud of you. We are proud of you. Thank you for taking a stand. We got to continue to stand against evil. We're not letting this stuff slide anymore, man. Let's go.
Welcome back to Training Tuesday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, only one man has to take a stand to start a change. It only took one young man to stand up over 10 years ago that led to the change in our country that you just witnessed in that clip. Young men and women are stepping up after Charlie Kirk's murder, first in his defense publicly, and even more importantly, now to take action to keep the movement alive and end the momentum. A movement that has energized citizens from all walks of life and all generations to insist our most basic values like freedom of speech and the right to keep and bear arms are protected and used in public. Our freedom to worship is now back in the public square where it should have been all along. It took one man standing for peace, Donald Trump, to end the war in the Middle East with a historic peace deal just yesterday. One man against all the odds. Yes, our ancestors taught us it only takes one man standing up for what he believes. We celebrate these changes and are encouraged that they will continue. In America, it still only takes a single man to change things. In the case we're discussing today, that man is a former U.S. Army Special Operations soldier and small business owner who has acted on his instinct to step into the fire for us before. When an entire response operation sprang up around him and his band of brothers made up of volunteers who shared the same background that saved many lives during the Hurricane Helene response and is still having a positive impact there today. Even former President Trump, at that time he was former, visited this man's operation and helped focus on the disaster. Well, my guest today is that man, Adam Smith. He's the founder and CEO of Savage Freedoms, a family man, a US Army Green Beret veteran, and he is running for Congress in North Carolina's 11th district in the Republican primary. Adam, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Good morning, Colonel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. Today the president flew back from like a day trip to the Middle East yesterday, late last night. I think he got in at like 3 o'clock this morning back at the White House, and he's gonna award the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk posthumously. today, and today's Charlie's birthday. So happy heavenly birthday, Charlie. I know you are proud to see what is happening in this country and even around the world with Turning Point USA and your movement that you started so many years ago when we met as a teenager. But that just tells us that what the president's going to do today, he's keeping his word to Charlie's widow, Erica. And he's also very serious about Kirk's effort in his young life and what it did to change America. Your thoughts on it?
Well, I think your opening monologue was right on point. I mean, ultimately, it only takes one man. We've watched it over and over again throughout the history of the United States. One individual who has the ability to ignite and motivate the base to take massive action. We watched it during the Founding Fathers and ultimately the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and how those group of men, that small group of individuals, came together and changed the face of the world by ultimately leading a rebellion to defeat the largest empire at that point in the history of the world. And I think, ultimately when it comes to what Charlie's doing and what he's done and now what Turning Point is doing, it was always about putting his faith first. It was always about putting his belief in God first. I mean, the thing he wanted to be known most for was being courageous in his faith. And I think, now more than ever before, bringing our faith back into the mainstream, bringing our faith back into the public square. We should have never had to sit in the corner and whisper because we were afraid we would offend someone about our faith of Christ. We shouldn't have to have whispered in the corners about political policies that we supported or thought were good for the nation because we might offend someone or we might get canceled in the process. There is a spectacular revival happening across the country, and it's going to take young people. It's going to take people under the age of 45 to take massive action and continue to move this movement forward, because it's their voices. We are the next generation. And it's the guys that are my age, the guys that are younger than me, the guys that are in their late 20s that are going to have to continue to carry this message forward and continue the mission.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Charlie would have been 32 years old today. So I met him when I first ran for U.S. Senate, started in 2013. So I was seeing him go on the college campuses already then. I think he was still about 19 years old at that point. So we've been following each other and supporting each other on social media all this time. But one of the things that I didn't realize is that there were two things, really. One is that he was really witnessing the gospel for Jesus Christ, but doing it in the framework of freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, to try to change young Americans' lives on college campuses. But, up until last year, I really had never been able to get to any of his big events that he's did. And he was really very good at it. I actually got to speak at AmFest last December from the stage. And the interesting thing that struck me was I didn't realize that Charlie had energized my generation and the generation 10 years before me. I'll be 64 next month. So the boomer generation, and I'm like right at the leading edge of the X generation. I didn't realize that those folks were as energized as the young people. And it was at the events that you could see that, because they would come together in one room and it would be about 50-50.
Yeah, I spoke, or I've spoken at 2 or 3 different Charlie Kirk vigils at this point, and I'm going to be speaking again tonight in Waxhaw, North Carolina, at another Charlie Kirk vigil. And you're absolutely right. It is not just my generation or those younger than me. Charlie and his movement mobilized everybody. Everybody got fired up and excited when they heard Charlie talk. And I think more importantly now than ever before, watching what happened to him nationally and internationally. I mean, it was all over the news everywhere. It was all over the internet. You couldn't not see what happened to Charlie, even if you were trying not to see what happened to Charlie. It's mobilized Christian conservatism in the United States like nothing I've ever personally experienced in my lifetime. And I think that we're at a point now, more than ever before, people have to remember that Charlie's mission was not to sit quietly on the sidelines. Charlie's mission was to evangelize the word of God, and also at the same time promote the founding principles on how this country was founded upon. And I think if we recognize that, we as Christian conservatives, in general, we as conservatives in the United States, we have to remember that we now have a responsibility to carry that flag. The mission is to not sit on the sidelines. We get distracted too often with all the shenanigans that's going on in the world, and we get distracted by all of these other things that Kansas City shuffle, look left while we move right. The fact is that we have to stay target focused and mission focused like never before. And that targeted mission is to remember that the fight for the moral soul of our country is a 24/7 effort. And it cannot just be conducted by individuals who sit in seats of power or seats of office. It has to be conducted by every single American who believes in the foundational principles of this country, to mobilize themselves, to take personal action, to engage in civic discourse, to engage and have knowledge about the current events of what's going on, understand how the government functions in general, and change at the lowest level possible. Because that's where it starts. It starts in the school boards. It starts in the county commissioners. It starts in the town commissions and town mayorships. If we can change at that level, then we have the ability to change power at the top. But the only way it happens if we remember that this mission to exercise our rights and our freedoms every single day, to not sit quietly on the sidelines and abdicate our voice to an opposition that won't sit quietly on the sidelines, who has proven over and over again that they'll do literally whatever it takes to manipulate the mass, to manipulate the message in order for them to win and maintain power and strip the rights of the people away every single day. That was Charlie's mission. He just did it in such a unique and, I would say, dignified manner that we don't see that often.
Yeah, he reminds me of, and I'll be honest, the part about witnessing the gospel almost got past me. I mean, I started to notice it really after he became a husband and a dad is when it first came out. But he was doing it all along. If you go back and look at even the clips that I've seen that about the time that he and I met years ago, he was still doing it, but it wasn't as prevalent because, you know, he wasn't talking about being a husband and a dad and going out and having kids, you know, and saving the world. That basically, that was his viewpoint. Go out, get married, have children, save the world. That's what he was talking about at the end there. At the very last moment, he was absolutely talking about doing that very thing in a place that he loved doing it at. But what's interesting, and before we go to this first break, I want to get your take on it. But what's interesting is that the British in the Independence War days, in the run-up to that, came up with a derogatory term called the Black Road Regiment that they used for pastors that were preaching liberty from the pulpit. The pastors took that on, and when the revolution started, they literally took their black robes off in the pulpit to show their Continental Army uniforms and went off to help fight the War of Independence. But that network of pastors is something that we've been missing. And that's what Charlie really was doing, was being the messenger, not just for Christ, but for liberty, which is the most basic core value, reason for being of our entire concept here in the United States of America. And he was doing it in such a way that the pastors of today, most of them don't even recognize it. I can't tell you how many church services I've been in, but where the pastor hasn't mentioned Charlie Kirk in the last month. And when you asked him about it, my wife did this very thing. She went the very first Sunday because we've been in church shopping mode in our new location here for a couple of years now. And she's told the guy didn't mention him in his sermon. And she walked up to him and said, "Hey, you know, I just want you to know that I'm here because of Charlie Kirk. I decided to come back to this church and give you guys another shot because of him. Why didn't you mention him in your sermon?" And the guy goes, "Oh, my grandsons love him and everything and blah, blah, blah." But he never would explain why. And it's because of timidity, a lack of moral courage, a lack of the ability to see. And that's what you're talking about. When you're talking about, and we're talking about people that are not in power having to be the ones to shoulder this movement and this energy. That's the kind of example we have to show people so that those pastors like that can see and really get behind the movement because we need another Black Robe Regiment.
Yeah, I think, you say the term timidity, and unfortunately, I think our politicians have gotten to a point where they forgot the concept of being a statesman. Being a statesman is not being a career politician. Being a statesman is not constantly seeking the trappings of whatever office or title or seat that you sit in. Being a statesman means that you have a target and a mission to accomplish when you go to the Capitol. And then when you're done with that mission, you go home and you go back to being a productive member of society. On top of that, no longer being timid because you're worried about offending someone for your next reelection ploy. I think at the end of the day, this is the number one conversation I've had with so many people while we've been on the campaign, which is this. It's about time that someone stands up and is willing to actually voice what's actually going on for the American people, and somebody that's willing to go and, if they have to, flip over tables and kick down doors. It's what we did very well in the military, Colonel. You know that. Yeah. I know that. It's what we did. Yeah. Why isn't that same mentality being held by those individuals who call themselves selfless servants or servants of the people? Because politics has shifted. And you and I have both seen it in our lifetime. Politics has shifted away from being outspoken individuals about supporting your constituents and we the people, and turning into a politician, which is a career individual only seeking reelection. And 9 times out of 10, it's at any cost. And I think that there has to be a major pushback on this. And we see it happening. We see guys like, Congressman Pat Harrigan stepping up, Senator Mullins. We see Senator Ted Budd. There's a lot of individuals who are willing to speak up and push back. And we're watching them firsthand do it. And we're also watching them call out timidity and take massive action. And they're doing it in such a way that's in the betterment of the American people. We have to see more of that. We have to see more statesmen take action and less politicians.
We certainly do. And more money changer tables tossed in the temple like Jesus Christ did, which is what you're talking about. We'll be right back with Adam Smith after this commercial break.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
This is the town hall, so let's get to some questions.
Let's do it.
The first question is from Adam.
How are you, Senator Vance?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, a little tired. For the last 14 days, myself, my fiance, and some awesome pilots behind us have been delivering supplies all over Western North Carolina.
God bless you guys. God bless y'all. We love you. We're proud of you, and we're so grateful to you.
The question is, can we have the conversation about revamping a national disaster strategy so that we can utilize retired veterans and special operations personnel who have been leading the charge hands down in Western North Carolina and effectively provided food supplies and medical aid and assistance to thousands and thousands of lives, and revamping the national disaster strategy in the United States so that we can make it more effective?
I am sick and tired of weak representation in Washington. Aren't you? I think it's about time we have leadership with backbone in Congress. As a Green Beret and founder of Savage Freedom's Relief Operations, my team, the people of Western North Carolina, and I demonstrated to the governor and the Biden regime exactly what the backbone of the mountains looks like. That's why I'm going to D.C. I'm Adam Smith, and I'm running for Congress in Western North Carolina, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And, it's Charlie Kirk Day is what it is here in the United States of America. And my opening monologue talked about one man. that can impart change when change is necessary. And my guest today is that man, Adam Smith from Western North Carolina, where my family's home ground, ancestral ground, is even to this day. There are Manesses living in that part of our country. And Adam is the exact type of individual from those mountains, from that ground, that Americans have fought for since before the American Revolution and bled and died for all the way up to today. And he's running for Congress, not because it's personal, but because he sees what needs to be done, and the people with the power are not doing it. Adam, welcome back to the show. I had to show the little video there from your campaign website because it tells that story. You guys did a great job with that. It tells the story of why in a very short period of time. What are the main pillars of policy pillars of your campaign?
Well, the very first thing that we're looking at is reorganizing FEMA. You know, there's been this big conversation about disaster response and disaster relief, and the money has not been flowing as effectively and efficiently as it could be back into Western North Carolina. And there's a lot of my neighbors that are still living in campers. There's a lot of my neighbors that are still trying to figure out how to rebuild their business, and they're holding bags of small business loan debt that they've already got. And right now, really their only options 9 times out of 10 is to file or submit for a small business associate, an SBA loan, which gives them another bag of debt. So, you know, we have to be able to look at the effectiveness and the efficiency of moving taxpayers' dollars that they've already paid in taxes back to them. And ultimately, we have to do away with continuously pulling power back into the central government. The idea is to reinforce and incentivize the states to be able to process their own issues and handle their own issues and run their own money. And so reorganizing FEMA is a major, major, major priority, as well as getting the dollars to flow in a more fluid manner. Look, we're talking about $55 to $65 billion worth of damage in Western North Carolina. There's so much infrastructure redevelopment and small business reinvestment that has to happen that we have to look at a multitude of different options. President Trump in his first term decided to use these things called opportunity zones. Phenomenal concept, great tax incentive for small business development. Well, we have a great opportunity for reinvestment into the region, and that should be a conversation that we have with the president, which is what sort of opportunity zones can we bring into Western North Carolina to incentivize the investment and regrowth in small businesses? That's one piece. That's one of the biggest focuses. The second biggest focus, more than anything else, is business and industry. Industry has been fleeing Western North Carolina for a very long period of time. And in the process of that leaving, we've lost jobs, we've lost revenue, and that revenue has shifted over into primarily being tourism revenue. Now, it's not necessarily a derogatory thing to have your revenue from tourism. The problem is when you put all your eggs in one basket. And a majority of the small businesses in the region are triply damaged because they are holding a bag of debt. The only way to rebuild is to get another bag of debt. And now they're out almost 2.5 quarters of potential revenue generation because tourism has been on the down, has been lower since the storm happened. So, you know, look, if we can look at the ability to move taxpayers' dollars that have already been paid in taxes in a more effective and efficient manner to incentivize states and empower states to take that action and let them manage it at the lowest level possible and move power out of the central government and back into the hands of states, I think that changes the effectiveness and efficiency by which we can make this happen.
That's a big goal, my friend. You know, money is power, and centralized power is even more power. And the yahoos that are career politicians up there in what my friend Mike Church calls Mordor in Washington, D.C., what I call the swamp, is the central organ of power that is husbanding those dollars that you're talking about, that you and I have paid and your voters have paid already in. And how dare you want to bring that back to the state where they were paid into to do the right thing and give power back to the people?
Look, President Trump and this administration has already taken massive actions to reduce spending at the federal level. Now, I know everybody said the big beautiful bill came out and it added another $3 trillion in spending. Well, sure, it's added another $3 trillion in spending over a period of time, but at the same time, we're watching real time the reduction in the federal government workforce. We know that it becomes a problem when the federal government employs more people as a whole than any other business in the country combined. That's ridiculous. That was never the founding fathers' intention when it came to the formation of this country. So if President Trump and this administration can reduce the workforce, reduce spending, and ultimately negate the so-called necessity for more taxpayers' dollars getting pumped into the federal government, then maybe we should reconsider how many taxes are being told onto the American people and let them keep their money and keep their money at the lowest level. I'm 100% certain that the American taxpayer knows how to spend their dollar better than the state or the federal government does. So a major reduction and overhaul in taxes, a major reduction and overhaul in how much money people have the ability to keep vis-a-vis how much money we want to continue to pay to a government that just wants to send those dollars overseas. Look, we watched real time in Western North Carolina when people were still living in the depth of winter in tents and campers. And we watched FEMA under the Biden regime cut something like 22 million, or it was maybe even $22 billion, and sent it to illegal alien housing facilities in New York. And that's not a conspiracy theory. We know that to be a fact because they came out and stated it. They also came out 10 days into the new fiscal year and said, we have to reduce our spending because we're not going to have enough money for the rest of the year when it comes to disasters. That's American taxpayer dollars. While we in Western North Carolina were living in tents in the winter, money got sent to New York and other locations by FEMA, which is supposed to be the disaster relief organization of the country. And it didn't go to the people that needed it the most. It went to illegal aliens in this country. That is not how we spend the American taxpayer's dollar. And I'm pretty certain that we as taxpayers would have kept that dollar in our pocket if it could have helped us recover from this storm.
Yeah, absolutely. The on your initiative to reform FEMA. Now, the president ran on, if I remember correctly, some kind of concept that eliminated FEMA the way it exists today. How would your proposal fit into the president's policies that we're seeing developed from a public perspective? It's coming out slowly, I think.
Yeah, it's coming out really slowly. I haven't seen anything come yet from the FEMA Review Council that was founded nearly a year ago at this point. But I think some of the critical takeaways would be, the first thing is rather than doling funds into FEMA and those funds then get pumped into each individual agency like the Department of Transportation or Housing and Urban Development, HUD and DOT already have disaster relief buckets of money. So how about we let HUD and DOT what HUD and DOT does and work at the federal and state level as agencies rather than trying to have a singular choke point, which would be FEMA with its coordinations on how that functions and operates. The second thing would be is FEMA was never designed to be an immediate response organization. So how about we shift the way we dole out funding and move it into block grants, and those block grants can be doled out to the state level, and then the state can utilize those block grants to put it down. But I think there has to be some specific legislation, and I don't like more regulation. However, if we can regulate how executive branches at the state level receive disaster funds, right now, 9 times out of 10, the fund goes into nearly a slush fund, and then the executive branch has the ability to do with it what they want. Now, it's political suicide not to spend those dollars with what they're allocated for. However, every time the money gets touched, there's another 10% administrative fee. So $100 million comes down, $10 million disappears. And by the time that dollar gets to the taxpayer, we're sitting at 40 or 60 cents on the dollar versus what the actual dollar was coming out of the original allocation. So we have to change how dollars are appropriated. We have to change how dollars are moved, and we have to change the legislation on how they're spent when it gets down to the state level. Now, I know that sounds contradictory, but ultimately it's not, because that's specifically disaster relief funds. And if those funds are used to rebuild roads, rebuild infrastructure, rebuild small businesses, and block grants at a state level, which would be another conversation to be had with state legislation, that incentivizes those dollars to get to the lowest level possible, and that's the target.
Exactly right. Well, we're going to take another commercial break. We'll be back with Adam Smith, congressional candidate in North Carolina, District 11, in the Republican primary. He's the Republican you need, folks, because the other guy didn't get the job done. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
And life is too short to sit on the sidelines. There is a moral crisis that's happening in the United States, and the moral decay that we continue to watch, it has to be abated. And to sit on the sidelines means that we abdicate our voice. We abdicate as conservatives. We abdicate our position to push back and have a say in the direction of this country and this government. And when my daughter is 20 years old, will I be able to look in the mirror and tell myself that I did everything I could to be a service to my country at every opportunity that presented itself? And is this country a better place? And is it ready for her to step into the world to create some level of success? As of right now, I can't say yes to that. And that doesn't sit so well with me.
Wow, that's a powerful message.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Charlie Kirk Day. The president's going to award him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the existence of the country. Today, on his birthday, or his 32nd birthday today, because he's an American patriot that sacrificed his life for the basic core values of things like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. And we have to find those men and women that are willing to step into the arena. And that arena is the political arena, the arena that Teddy Roosevelt spoke about in his poem, The Man in the Arena. You have to do it. We have to get this job done. And once they're in the arena, they have to stay for as long as it takes, whether they're in office or out. Believe me, I've lived it since 2013, and my family's lived it, and we have to stay in here because this fight is worth the effort. And my guest today is Adam Smith from Western North Carolina, Congressional District 11. He's a Republican primary candidate for the congressional House seat there in 2026. And Adam, that clip there, I had to show it because you talk about when your daughter's 20. My youngest son turned 21 today, or a couple of days ago. And that's what I was thinking about when I decided to run for office. So you're doing this for the right reason, is my point there. And that's important because it's going to get rough. It's going to get tough. You said in the first segment that you mentioned manufacturing needing to come back to Western North Carolina and the entire state of North Carolina. What kind of manufacturing was there before it all went to tourism?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, we still have a few manufacturing companies that are quite large. Baxter, which is the number one manufacturer of all IV products for the most part in the United States. There's a Pratt & Whitney location that's in Asheville. But before that, we had paper mills and we had lumber yards and we had blanket factories and there was a multitude of different major industries that were in the region that didn't just provide jobs, but provided jobs and community. I mean, the whole reason why the city of Canton really exploded and grew was because of the paper mill that was there, that has been there for nearly 110 years. That's recently was shut down in the last couple of years. And so, you know, that's the industry piece. But, you know, to your point, when you said your son just turned 21 and I talked about my daughter, I think every parent believes that their children deserves better. And I think that every parent, and I really do believe that if they're a good, true, legitimately good parent, then they want better for their children and they want to be outshined for their children. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we doing enough? And every night I go to bed, I have a pit in my stomach because I feel like I haven't done enough that day. And when I wake up in the morning, the next morning, I have this, it's not panic or anxiety, but it's this drive, this something inside that says, get after it because you have to do more today. And when my daughter is 20, the question will always be asked. And I will always ask the question. I ask the question every day now as it is. Have I done enough to be a good father? Have I done enough to show up in my daughter's life? Have I done enough to prepare the world for her, not the other way around? My daughter is going to be prepared when she steps into the world. Her dad is a former Green Beret. Her mom is a super fit, extremely intelligent lady, like phenomenal woman. My daughter is tough. She's the princess tomboy. She likes to run around in her princess dress, bare feet outside. But the real question is going to come down is, have we prepared the world? And that requires us to be engaged. And that requires us to do more than just to sit back and be quiet and want to be left alone so that we can go to church, go to work, and raise our family. It requires more than it requires a dedicated, consistent, and concerted effort of showing up, speaking up, and standing against what's happening in our country.
Yeah, exactly right. So now that you have stepped into this political arena, what is your plan to win?
Oh, man, that's a good question. We're just talking about this last night, actually, with the team. We had a veterans sit down last evening in Marion, North Carolina, to have a conversation about veterans advocacy and veterans issues. You know, at the end of the day, this is going to sound completely asinine when I say this, but win or lose, there's an opportunity to achieve a bigger mission here because it's a platform and an opportunity to spread a message. And if we can unify the base and mobilize them, that's really what this boils down to. And we get people to get back into praying before they eat and sitting down with their family and having these kind of conversations. But ultimately, the plan to win, well, I don't want to give away too much strategy on public space because I don't want to give that away to the incumbent. But our plan to win is to mobilize a massive grassroots effort, which is the same thing we did during the storm. And we are boots on the ground. And I say that not tongue in cheek. Every single day, I am somewhere in the district. This afternoon, we're going to an event in Clyde. Yesterday, we were in Marion and also in Hendersonville. The day before that, we were in Haywood County. The day before that, we were in Transylvania County. The day before that, we were in Polk County. So this is going to be a massive grassroots effort. This is boots on the ground, walking around, shaking hands, and listening to people. The number one piece of information we've gotten about the incumbent is that he doesn't show up or he's not present and he's hard to get a hold of. Cool. Got it. If you want someone to show up and listen, we'll show up and listen. Again, I don't even have to give you feedback. I'll just listen to you because if it's an issue, I want to hear the problems. But I also want something more than that. And this is something I don't think most people talk about. I don't want to hear just problems. I want to hear possible solutions. And when people say, oh, that's your job, I cannot stand when people are good at finding problems but refuse to offer some semblance of a solution, even if it's a bad solution.
Yeah.
My team sergeant told me, Adam, don't ever bring a problem to me unless you have 3 solutions. And they don't even have to be good, but you have to at least thought about how to fix the problem before you bring the problem to me. And in general, what we see from the American people is we see people pointing out problems and then asking the politicians, what are you going to do to fix this problem? And my very first question that I ask when I get asked that question is, what are you currently doing to fix this problem? Has it worked? Have you seen success? What were your lessons learned? Can we replicate this and grow it so that we can use this same solution all over the district, not just in your one location? And that's the piece.
Yeah, that's very interesting because not much has changed in the arena since I last ran for office, which wasn't that long ago, but not much has changed. The most common complaint from the voters that I used to hear about and still hear about, because I'm active in the GOP party apparatus here in Mississippi, but the most common complaint is the solution that was come up with in Washington doesn't work. We need solutions from the American people that want to send us to Washington or to the state house or to the city council or the county commission or whatever you want to call it, whatever level you're talking about, to work solutions that will work. And that takes all of us putting our minds together. And
the last thing we want to do is see a federal solution that costs trillions or billions or millions of dollars, and it's ineffective and it doesn't work. It would be far better. There's a reason why companies all over the world use pilot programs to test market reception, product value, and the like. They do testing on potential concepts or solutions before they go out and spend, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on marketing the product. The United States, the federal government especially, they don't have a fiduciary responsibility in general to the American taxpayers' dollars because they prove it with their action. We continue to send billions of dollars overseas into programs that aren't necessarily in the best interest of the American people. And at the same time, we don't listen to solutions from the American people. Now, granted, there are some things that even I don't know about, just like when we were in the intelligence community, there's things that we don't know about. And there's some other considerations. But when you get to that position to have the ability to be read onto those programs, then you listen to a possible solution, and then you consider third and fourth order effects on the back end of that to see if it's viable and feasible. It would be amazing if we could have leadership stop operating like politicians and start operating like small business owners that understand that we have to find an effective solution, test the efficacy of that solution, and then figure out how to replicate that solution at the lowest level possible before pumping trillions of dollars into some effort that doesn't have efficacy or efficiency on the back end. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, we're in the middle of this government shutdown now. I've lost count how many I went through as a military member and everything, but I'd never lost any pay. And the military was paid today, folks. I'm hearing from folks that are on active duty that said the pay was made, but the plan the plan that President Trump's team put together to get that pay made was opposed by the so-called smart people in the media in Washington, D.C. That tells you the story that we're talking about, doesn't it? Got about a minute left before we go to the last break.
I think it speaks for itself. I mean, look, if the smartest people of our country are running the country, I think we have some serious worries and concerns when it comes to individuals who continue to vote against common sense policy. And, we hear that term common sense policy or common sense legislation all too often from the left, but that's because their common sense legislation is compelling language or compelling speech, as incentivizing or, producing hate crimes against an individual who says that a man can't be a woman and a woman can't be a man. When it comes to paying our military, I would say that's pretty common sense.
Yeah, it is very common sense. And that's what we see being applied during this shutdown, which I think is probably the best thing to happen to the American people because it's revealing the truth about so many entities, starting from Democrat Party officials, elected people, all in the folks in the media, all the way down to school teachers that unfortunately we have in our public schools. Well, we got to take one more break, and when we come back, I want to shift focus to foreign policy a bit and talk about this peace plan that the President of the United States has pulled off so far, phase one of it, and then phase two, and what ideas you'll offer as a congressional member in that process of developing a sound national security policy that doesn't include endless wars. We'll be right back with Adam Smith.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
We saw President Trump there taking the time with the hostages, and once again, you're seeing that empathetic side of President Trump really come to the forefront. You're seeing the fact that this is a man who, and Steve, you and I were down at Mar-a-Lago, and we were at that event where President Trump came out and talked about the casualties in the Ukraine war he was talking about at the time, but you could see it in his face and you could read it in his eyes that this is a man who deeply, deeply cares about the wounds of war, who cares about the blood that's being spilled. And this is exactly the same man who would speak out against the global war on terror during the height of the Bush administration, one of the few people as a Republican to do so, and then, of course, became the first Republican to speak about this on the Republican stage back in 2015, 10 years ago now, 10 plus years. And so he's been the person to say, look, it's time to actually put down the swords, to bring people home, to bring sons back to their fathers, to bring daughters back to their mothers. And it's so rare. It's so rare in politics where you actually get to do something that is just objectively good and an absolute good. And that's what he's done today.
Joe, and it's Tuesday, October 14th. My guest is congressional candidate in North Carolina's 11th District, Adam Smith, former special operations soldier, a businessman, a family man, and he has stepped into this political arena. And, Adam, welcome back. The clip there really lays out the reason why I believe Donald Trump has been so successful with veterans like me, who was in the Pentagon on 9/11, fought and commanded in the GWAT, fought in the GWAT, the global war on terrorism, and has been devastated by what this country did with that debacle of a withdrawal from Afghanistan and wasting our kids' lives. And it's the reason why I entered the political arena in 2013. One of my platform planks was ending the endless war policies because it was hurting. It's hurting America. Instead of showing strength and providing deterrence to the really big bad guys like China and Russia, it's hurting America. It's hurting the free people of the world that want it, that yearn to live free, that aren't American, because it's strengthening our adversaries. Mm-hmm. And this president has accomplished something, I think, in the Middle East, and we'll see how the next phase 2 goes. But I believe the possibility is there because he has done two things. He has acknowledged that every human life is worth ending this stuff. And two, he has shown that he also has the strength to do what's necessary to stop people from killing others, including their own people, like what happened with the Iranians here a few months ago. And that combination is what matters in that part of the world and really around the world, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think if we look at what happened during the Biden regime globally, when it came to, antagonizing actions from emboldened enemies like Russia or countries like Russia, look, Russia's not super friendly to the United States. They haven't been since World War I. Right. This is true. We see the same thing with Iran. We saw the same thing with Hamas. Under Biden's administration, when Hamas conducted the October 7th terror attack, they did it because they knew there wasn't going to be major backlash from an invalid president at that point. Right. Prior to that, under Trump's administration, we watched the entire world kind of walk on eggshells most of the time because they didn't know what he would be willing to do in opposition to their aggressive action. So then we saw Russia make entry into Ukraine, which is another issue that is, in general, the logic around it is kind of beyond me when it comes to this battle of whether we should support, not support, where the money is going, not going. There's a whole lot of stuff around that as well. So what President Trump has done in the Middle East is definitively, it's something to be cheered because, look, Hillary Clinton came out and even gave congratulations to President Trump, and she despises the man. So if even Hillary Clinton can come out and say, hey, good job, President Trump, for making this happen, I think that there's something to be considered here. And I think rather than having this continued party line that we see all the time from the left, bash President Trump and not even mention the fact that he was able to make this happen, it was President Trump, his administration, and a multitude of other nations that came together and sat down and said, this must take place. And Hamas finally towed the line, which is a phenomenal thing to see. Hamas, you have to think one more thing on this as well. The attack against Iran sent a very clear message to Iran and sent a very clear message to all of Iran's surrogates that said, this is what we will do. This is what we're willing to do to protect the national interest of the United States and their allies. And if you don't cut it out, you're next on the list. And I think Hamas heard that loud and clear.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of the so-called experts are wringing their hands today about this deal and about the posture of the United States. These are the same people that said, you mentioned Hillary Clinton, that Donald Trump's an isolationist. Well, when you look at that stage yesterday in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, it certainly doesn't look isolationist to me. And that's what we've been saying all along. Just because we questioned and Donald Trump ran on ending the war in Ukraine as fast as possible, and we questioned the amount of resources, the priorities, those kind of things about that issue, doesn't mean we're isolationists. I mean, I believe in the old peace through strength adage. That's what I grew up on. It's what I saw work against the Soviet communists, against Soviet communism. I saw it actually play out and work both in my childhood and my adulthood in the U.S. military. I was an eyewitness to a lot of that and participated in some of it. So I will go with a concept that works, that doesn't require me to put my 21-year-old on a battlefield to try to decide where the eastern border of Ukraine and Russia is. That's not my problem. And so this president has this policy that uses the same words, peace through strength. I don't think anybody's going to agree with everything that he does or says or decides. That's impossible. But my goodness, it sure looks like what he is doing is best for the people of the United States of America. And in fact, even the best for the people around the world that want to live free instead of live under tyranny and oppression, like from Hamas and Iran.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think there may be some issues at the back end of this. I mean, ultimately, it's a ceasefire, and they've got a 20-point agreement that they're utilizing at this time. Yeah. But part of that agreement is to release prisoners from Israeli jails that have life sentences that 9 times, I think a majority of them have been arrested for heinous crimes. And we're going to put those people back into circulation. So I think that there's going to be some other issues on the back end of this. I think the initial ceasefire is a phenomenal opportunity to continue the conversation and to generate some leverage from the international community against Hamas as a terror organization and see what we can do to help rebuild Gaza and that region into something that could be better. I mean, look, millions of dollars, at this point, billions of dollars has been pumped into the pockets of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas and its leadership. And a majority of that money never made it to the people of Gaza. Not a penny. On top of that, we saw firsthand how aid relief supplies were coming into the region and being hoarded and cached away by Hamas and its personnel on the ground so that it could continue to starve its people as a political talking point in order to an attempt to gain leverage. Think about this. If the president of the United States and all the senior leadership decided to hoard supplies from the American people all the way down to the state level or the county level in order to create some level of propaganda in opposition to an enemy that's ideologically opposed to your religion, your faith, and living on earth in general, the American people would raise up. They would raise up in such a way that the Civil War wouldn't even be able to touch what would happen if the American people found out that took place. And yet we still don't see that level of pushback from the people in Gaza right now when it comes to Hamas and its leadership. So I think there's going to be some further consideration and conversation that has to happen on the back end of this, because I think there's still going to be some problems over the long term when it comes to Hamas's role in the region.
Yeah. What I like about the plan is that it involves primarily Arab Muslim nations that have never stepped up before because they haven't had the space. And I think President Trump's approach has created the space for them to be able to do that, so they can exercise their will and their power. And that's what I'm hoping. I know hope is not a course of action, but I see that as that's opening the door to get the Hamas solved, which really has to be that Hamas can have no more political or military power at all ever again,
I think
in any way whatsoever. That's going to
Sorry, I think that's going to be a critical piece. That has to happen.
Yeah.
And to your previous point, I just want to add, the idea that when the world devolves or countries devolve into kinetic warfare, that the United States has to immediately throw troops into the fight is this concept that we have to move beyond. Right? Yeah. The way we handle the situation, with President Trump and the administration has handled the situation through diplomacy, through realpolitik, by applying economic sanctions, and also demonstrating the projection of geo-military strategic force and power around the world. That's the way to do this. Do it in a way that preserves the life of the American people. That is an American first agenda.
Exactly right. And that's what your agenda is America first in your campaign. We got a couple minutes left here, Adam. Let's talk about where you want to go with the campaign, what's next on the horizon, and how folks can get to help you.
Well, first, if you have an interest in learning more, you can go to adaminthehouse.com. There's another Adam Smith who's currently a sitting member of Congress who's from Washington State. He's a Democrat. That's not me. Also, the big push right now is just getting out and shaking hands. We want to invite everybody to come out and have a conversation. We want to invite you to come to these events, which we post on all of our social media, and we're working on getting the website up to date and ready to go. So it also has these dates on there. But come out, come. If you don't agree, come protest. If you have a conversation or question, come ask it. Have a conversation. I want to hear from the constituents, my neighbors that live here in Western North Carolina. I want to hear what your problems are. I want to hear what your solutions are. I want to hear what you most fear. I want to hear what you most enjoy about being in Western North Carolina and the life that we get to live here in the mountains. So the next step on this great endeavor is actually we're doing a trip to D.C. in a couple of weeks to have some conversations up there. And then we'll be coming back to continue on the campaign trail with a multitude of meet and greets and town halls all over the region.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. I know it's a lot of time for a candidate to come on a show for an hour, but we appreciate it. We appreciate what you're doing for Western North Carolina. We appreciate what you've done for our country so far and what you're going to do for it in the future. Full transparency, folks, my PAC, Gator PAC, is backing Adam Smith here, and you can go to gatorpac.com, make a $5 a month recurring donation to help out with that effort. But definitely go to his campaign website and make a donation and support this man, because we need him in the United States Congress. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Colonel. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you. Well, tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday. 2 guests. First 30 minutes is Cliff Maloney. You remember him from the Pennsylvania chase operation that he and Charlie Kirk did that won the presidency for Donald J. Trump. Well, he's doing New Jersey chase now, and we're helping him with that effort. We're going to want to get some news out on Jack Ciattarelli's campaign for governor. He almost won last time. President Trump's behind him. The whole team is behind him. Got to get it done. And then from Arkansas, retired Army Colonel Conrad Reynolds is going to be here to talk about the political persecution because he wants paper ballots and hand counts in the state of Arkansas coming from a Republican attorney general. I'll see you then.